Hello everyone, I'm Sebastian Y, and this is Managerial Economics. In this video, I'm going to discuss two more pricing strategies monopolists can use to make even more profit. These are versioning and bundling. The models we'll look at for both of these strategies will involve discrete choices. Instead of customers being able to buy any quantity, whether that's integers or fractions, we're going to simplify the decision down to whether a consumer will buy or not buy. There will be many different consumers, and for each consumer we will reduce their preferences down to their willingness to pay for the good. Versioning is a strategy in which a firm offers multiple versions of a good at different prices. This will include a high-quality version at a high price and a low-quality version at a low price. At minimum, we need to have two different versions, but it is possible to have more than two. Some consumers care more about quality than others and will be targeted accordingly. The whole point of a versioning strategy is to sell the high-quality good at a high price to those who care about quality and sell the lower-quality version at a lower price to those who don't care about quality as much. There are many examples of this we see in real life, including airline tickets, where we have first class and economy class, software, where we have a professional version and a student version, electronics such as computers and smartphones that have more storage or faster processors, as well as printers that print faster or print slower. Telecommunications is versioned to have faster and slower internet speeds, and cell phone plans have more or less data. One example that empirical economists like me encounter is versioning in data analysis software. Stata, which is the software I use to create all the graphs for the course notes, has several different versions depending on how many features that you are looking for. Versioning is useful when firms cannot distinguish between customers with a high and low willingness to pay. As such, the firms rely on the customers to choose a version. The pricing challenge here is to get consumers to make the correct choice. Think about the airline industry. If first class is priced too high relative to economy class, even the quality-loving consumers might decide to forego first class and switch to economy. That would defeat the entire purpose of having first class as an option. If economy is priced too high, the customers who don't care about quality so much might decide not to fly at all. Let's consider an example of a market for photo editing software. We will assume the seller of the software is a monopoly, and they have a marginal cost of 0 because the customers just download the software. The monopolist knows the market is divided into two segments. 100 amateurs and 100 professionals. There are two versions of the software: the basic version and the gold version. Everyone agrees that the gold version is better than the basic version, but the degree to which a consumer cares about those extra features the gold version has depends on whether they are an amateur or a professional who is able to make use of those features. Consumers will buy at most one copy of the software, either the basic version or the gold version, or potentially neither of them. Consumers will buy whichever option gives them more consumer surplus. The table on the screen summarizes each segment's willingness to pay for each version. The amateurs are willing to pay 50 for the basic and 60 for the gold. They know the gold is better, but they can't make use of the extra features particularly well, so it's only worth a little bit more to them. On the other hand, the professionals are willing to pay 60 for the basic, but the extra features in the gold version are useful to them, so they get an additional 40 out of that and are willing to pay 100. Since choices are discrete, we can no longer use the first-order conditions to maximize profit. Instead, we're going to have to try all the potential prices here to determine which one is best. We'll first consider the case where the monopolist only offers one version of the good. Let's start with the basic. Since the amateurs are willing to pay 50 and the professionals are willing to pay 60, there isn't any reason to entertain any other possible prices. We're either going to sell it at the lower price of 50 and sell to everyone, or the higher price of 60 and sell just to the professionals. If we price the basic version at 50, then our quantity will be 100 amateurs and 100 professionals. Both are willing to pay that, so we get 200, and our profit will be 50 times 200, which is 10,000. Note that revenue and profit are the same here because there was zero marginal cost. If there is a cost, then we need to factor that in when we calculate the profit. If we price the basic version at 60, then only the professionals will buy it. So we'll sell only 100 units, which means that our total profit will be 60 times 100, which is 6,000. Of these two options, pricing at 50 is the better choice. Now let's suppose that we sell the gold version only. There are two potential choices here, 60 and 100. If we price at 60, we'll sell to everyone. This gives us a total profit of 12,000. If we price at 100, then we are going to sell just to the professionals, 100 of those, for a profit of 100 times 100, which is 10,000. So we can see that selling just the gold at a price of 60, selling to everyone, is the best way to go here. If we think about making this choice, what we've done is priced low to sell to everyone. This gives each of the professionals a consumer surplus of 40. That is potential profit that we could take advantage of. On the other hand, it could have turned out that it was better to charge the high price to just the professionals and forget about the amateurs entirely. In that case, there would have been potential profit left on the table because of the untapped segment of the market in the amateurs. Either way, there's potential for more profit if we do versioning. Let's see what happens if we sell both versions. The whole point of versioning is to get the professionals to buy the gold version while letting the amateurs buy the basic version. If both end up buying the same one, we've defeated the entire purpose of versioning, and we would be better off just selling the gold version by itself. At first pass, it might seem tempting to choose the price of the basic as 50, which is the amateur's willingness to pay, and the price of the gold at 100, which is the professional's willingness to pay for that version. Here, the price of the gold is way too high for the amateurs, so they're definitely going to buy the basic. But what about the professionals? Let's calculate the professionals' consumer surplus from the basic version. They're willing to pay 60. They would pay 50 if they bought it, for a surplus of 10. For the gold version, they're willing to pay 100, but the price is also 100, so their surplus is 0. This means that the professionals would actually end up buying the basic version because the gold version is just too expensive. We need to lower the price of the gold version just enough for the professionals to have an incentive to buy it. Since they're getting 10 surplus off of the basic version, we need to also give them 10 surplus on the gold version. That means that we need to actually set the price of the gold version at 90, which is 100 minus 10, the surplus that we need them to get. To absolutely ensure that they buy the gold version, we could bring it down to a price of slightly under 90, like $89.99, but I'm going to call it close enough and assume that they are going to go for the gold version. With all this in place, our total profit will be price of 90 times a quantity of 100 for the gold, and then a price of 50 times a quantity of 100 for the basic, and that's going to give us 14,000, which is higher than the 12,000 that we got without versioning. Here we were able to price discriminate, charge a different price to the amateurs and the professionals without knowing who was who. We allowed them to select themselves, but designed the prices to give them the incentives to pick the one we wanted them to pick. Generally speaking, versioning is quite effective when one group is willing to pay a lot more than the other for quality, which was certainly the case here. Our final pricing strategy is bundling. Bundling involves selling multiple different goods, known as components, together as a package. This is distinct from the practice of block pricing, which we talked about earlier, where you have a package of the same good. Bundling must involve a package of at least two different goods. Within bundling, there are three cases to consider. First is pure components, where the components are sold a la carte only and not in bundles. This is seen in fancy steakhouses where you order just a steak by itself and you order all the sides separately. Next, in pure bundling, components are sold in bundles only and never on their own. A good example of this would be cable TV packages. You might also hear the term tying, which refers to pure bundling. Finally, in mixed bundling, components are sold both individually and in bundles. Fast food restaurants engage in mixed bundling, where you can get a sandwich, drinks, and fries all on their own or as part of a meal. There have been a few interesting historical examples of bundling. In the late 1990s, Microsoft began bundling Internet Explorer, their web browser, with Windows. At the time, the browser market was split between Internet Explorer and Netscape Navigator. By bundling Internet Explorer with Windows, Microsoft leveraged their dominance in the operating system market to drive their rival out of the browser market. This eventually led to antitrust litigation against Microsoft. Microsoft was nearly broken up by this lawsuit, but eventually that was reduced to a fine. In the mid-2000s, Sony launched the PlayStation 3 game console, which was bundled with a Blu-ray player. At that time, Sony was engaged in a standard war with Toshiba. Toshiba produced the rival HD optical medium known as HD DVD. By bundling a Blu-ray player with the PlayStation 3, Sony established a base of people who already had a Blu-ray player and therefore could buy Blu-ray movies. This is generally credited as the reason why Sony won the standard war against Toshiba, and HD DVD was eventually driven out of the market and is no longer available. To illustrate the concept of bundling, let's consider the example of Microsoft Office. We will again assume that Microsoft is a monopoly in this market for both word processors and spreadsheets. Suppose there are two segments in this market, 100 writers and 100 engineers. We will assume there are two products, Word and Excel. Consumers will either buy a copy of Word or not buy a copy of Word, and buy a copy of Excel or not buy a copy of Excel. They could end up buying both products or one product or neither. But consumers will at most buy one copy of each product. As with our versioning example, they're going to make the choices that will maximize their consumer surplus. We will again assume that this is downloadable software, so there is no marginal cost. The table summarizes each segment's willingness to pay for each product. Let's first consider a pure components strategy. In this strategy, we are going to choose prices for Word and Excel independently. For Word, we have two potential prices, 70 and 40. If we price Word at 40, we're going to sell to both segments. The writers and the engineers will be willing to buy this, so we're going to have a quantity of 200 and a profit of 40 times 200, which is 8,000. If we raise the price up to 70, we're going to sell only to the writers, and so there's 100 of those, and our profit will be 7,000. As we can see, it's better to price low and sell to everyone in this case, so we'll choose a price of 40 for Word. For Excel, we have two options. We could price at 30 to sell to everyone, or we could price Excel at 70 to sell just to the engineers. If we price at 30, we will sell to everyone and make a profit of 30 times 200, which is 6,000. And if we sell at a price of 70, we will only sell to the engineers, and there are 100 of them, which results in a profit of 7,000. We get a different result here with Excel, which tells us that the better choice is to price high and sell only to the engineers and completely forget about the writers in this case. Putting this all together, we would price Word at 40, Excel at 70, and then combine these to get a total profit of 8,000 plus 7,000, which is 15,000. I want to again point out that there was no marginal cost here, so total revenue equals total cost. If we did have costs here, we would have to factor these in calculating all of these profits. We will now consider the case of pure bundling. We will now sell Word and Excel together as a package and not offer either of them on their own. To figure out what kind of prices we could charge for this, we need to figure out the willingness to pay for the bundle. For the writers, they're willing to pay 70 for Word and 30 for Excel, so their willingness to pay is 100. And for the engineers, they're willing to pay 40 for Word and 70 for Excel, which gives us 110. We now have the two prices that we need to try for the price of the bundle. We can charge 100 for the bundle, which gives us a total quantity of 200. We're selling to both segments. We will make a profit of 200 times 100, which is 20,000. If we price the bundle at 110, we're going to sell to just half of the market, just the engineers, which will give us a total profit of 110 times 1,000, which is 11,000. The clear winner here is pricing at 100, where we get a total profit of 20,000. Comparing that back with the 15,000 we got from pure components, we can see that we do better by bundling. Bundling works well when the segments differ a lot on their values for the individual components, but don't differ very much in their valuation for the whole bundle. We can see that the writers cared a lot more about Word than the engineers did, and the engineers cared a lot more about Excel than the writers did. But once we add everything up, these two groups look almost the same. When we charge the high price for Excel, we completely abandon the writer segment. When we charge the low price for Word, we left a lot of surplus to the writers. We are now getting all the possible surplus out of the writers, and all but 10 surplus from each engineer. This is what's driving the added profit here. To summarize, bundling is effective when it can level the differences between the segments. Let's look at one more example, which will illustrate the potential of mixed bundling. Remember that mixed bundling is when we offer the bundle, but also components on their own. Suppose we have a fast food restaurant that sells hamburgers and fries. We have 3 segments with 10 consumers each. We have 10 omnivores who like burgers and fries. We have 10 meat lovers who are willing to eat fries but care a lot more about the burger. And we have 10 vegetarians who would never buy the burger but do enjoy the fries. The willingness to pay for each product across each segment are shown in the table. We are going to continue assuming that the marginal cost is 0 just for simplicity, but that's certainly not realistic in this case. If we do have costs, we do need to take those into account. For the hamburger, we have 2 prices that we need to try, 4 and 5. There is a third choice here, 0, but of course that's going to make us 0 profit, so we won't entertain that option. If we price at 4, we're going to sell to both the omnivores and the meat lovers, so our quantity of hamburgers will be 20, and our total profit will be 4 times 20, which is 80. If we choose 5, we're going to sell only to the meat lovers, so that will be 10 quantity with a profit of 5 times 10, which is 50. It's clearly the better choice here to choose price of 4. For the fries, we also have 2 options. One, to sell to all 3 groups, or we could raise the price to 3 and forget about the meat lovers, selling to just the vegetarians and the omnivores. If the price is 1, we have a quantity of 30 for a profit of 30. If we price at 3, we have a quantity of 20, and we are going to have a profit of 60. Pricing at 3 is clearly the better choice, so our total profit will be 80 plus 60 equals 140. So our profit will be 140 if we pursue the pure component strategy. Let's look at the bundle. If we make a full meal deal of burger and fries together, we add up the willingness to pay for each group. So for the omnivores, they're willing to pay 4 for the burger and 3 for the fries, so that's going to be 7. For the meat lovers, they're willing to pay 5 for the burger and 1 for the fries, so that's going to be 6. And for the vegetarians, 0 for the hamburger and 3 for the fries, for a total of 3. This is going to give us 3 different options to choose for the price. If we go with a price of 7, then we're going to sell to just the omnivores, so 10, for a profit of 70. If we price the bundle at 6, we're going to sell to the meat lovers and the omnivores, so we're going to get 20 for a profit of 120. And finally, if we go all the way down to 3, we're going to sell to everyone, 30 people total, and get a profit of 90. We can see that pricing the bundle at 6 and forgetting about the vegetarians is the best choice here for a profit of 120. But that's not quite as good as the individual components profit of 140. We can see from this that pure bundling does not always give us a better result than pure components. But let's think about a possible mixed bundling strategy. Can we offer the bundle alongside individual components on their own? The vegetarians in this example provide us with an untapped market. They were only willing to pay 3 for the bundle, so we ended up forgetting about them and selling the bundle just to the omnivores and the meat lovers. But they still are willing to pay 3 for fries. If we were to sell the fries for a price of 3, the vegetarians would be willing to come on board. They're still not going to buy the bundle, but they will buy the fries. We need to watch out to make sure that selling the fries on their own are not going to cannibalize sales of the bundle. That's not going to be a problem here because the meat lovers only are willing to pay 1 for the fries, so they would not be tempted by this. The omnivores are willing to pay the 3 for the fries, but they're already getting a consumer surplus of 1 from the bundle. They're willing to pay 7 for the bundle, they're only paying 6 for it, and so they're very happy with that choice. They get a surplus of 1, and so they would never switch to buying just the fries where they would get a surplus of 0. So we're all good there. So we're going to sell the fries on their own for 3. We're going to sell the bundle of burgers and fries for 6 to get a quantity of fries on their own of 10 and a quantity of the bundle of 20, which is going to give us a total profit of 30 plus 120 equals 150, which is better than the 140 that we got from the pure components. There's no reason to offer the hamburger on its own because everyone who cares about the hamburger is already buying it through the bundle, and the vegetarians have no interest in it. If we had a fourth group that simply hated the French fries, we might have potential in offering the burger by itself. But as it stands, that's not the case. I did a little research and found out what the prices for McDonald's items are, as an example. The Big Mac is $3.99, medium drink $1.29, and medium fries $1.79. Buying all of those things on their own as components would bring the total to $7.07, whereas those 3 items are sold together as a combo meal for $5.99. This is effective for McDonald's because fries and drinks have a relatively low marginal cost compared to Big Macs. At the same time, they still offer the drink by itself for a thirsty customer who just wants to buy the drink and isn't interested in any food. That brings us to the end of advanced pricing strategies and our study of monopoly in general. We're going to spend the rest of the course thinking about oligopolies, which are markets with more than one firm but not enough to be perfectly competitive. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Thanks for watching.